Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to A Real Point of View here on the Blog Talk Network. We're going to call it the Blog Talk Network. No, we're not. Welcome to A Real Point of View, ladies and gentlemen, here on Google Plus and also on our YouTube channel. Tonight, we're going to talk about one of the most seemingly prolific films in the box office this year. End of 2015 and also the beginning of 2016, and that's Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Joining us today on our show is, of course, our co-host, Mr. Larry Domkowski from Must See Movies.
Woohoo!
And our critic at large, Mr. Tony King. He is our adventure and fantasy guru, and he's going to take us on a tour today, as well as talk about what his excitement is about this particular saga, the Star Wars saga, and then we'll talk a little bit more about Star Wars Force Awakening after that. So, hey Tony, how you doing? Hey Larry, how you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good. Mr. Larry?
Oh man, I tell you, I'm doing great. I got coffee here, and we're talking Star Wars. It doesn't get much better than that, man.
Yeah, I agree. I've got my drink here. I think all three of us have our libation for this evening. So, without further ado, why don't we get into it? So, Tony, Larry, you guys got to see the movie. I know you guys both went on the day that it opened, right?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it did. Yep, definitely.
Yeah, I got to see it a few days later, so we're pretty much tuned into the most recent film, and I think I haven't seen all the films, just to be very honest, but I think I've seen probably about 85% of every of the films, and read a lot of interesting articles about the films, and also seen the trailers. And for the ones that I didn't get to see, why don't we just kind of talk about kind of an overview of Star Wars as an enterprise here, Star Wars as this major saga. One of the things I realized, and as I look back at seeing the original films that came out, this kind of started back in 1977 with George Lucas, guys. So why don't we go it this way, Tony? What do you think about that? It wasn't 77; it was before that.
Yeah, the actual start of this happened somewhere in the middle of when he was shooting American Graffiti.
Okay. I wasn't getting that technical.
This is important because, you see, he was having some real problems in funding American Graffiti, and while he was working on that, he went to his funding people and said, well, I've got this idea too, and he started working with it, and next thing you know, he was trying to wrap up American Graffiti real fast because he was already neck deep into writing Star Wars. And a lot of people don't know this, but the novel for Star Wars, just called Star Wars, if you can find it, and it's very rare, but it's a little pocket, it's a paperback pocketbook, and it has a field of stars with Darth Vader on the front and saying Star Wars on it. It doesn't say A New Hope, none of that stuff. And that came out almost a year before the movie.
Now, of course, you're tempting the fates here because Tony's going to go out and buy it.
I think I bought enough off eBay the last, month or so. I'm good. Plus, like you said, that is a very rare piece. So.
But you know what I'm talking about, right, Tony?
Yes. It's a very rare, very expensive piece. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm good on that.
and to get the process of getting the money together was not just we've heard the stories about Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, but for that first film, it was ludicrous crazy to try to get the money just so that they could get it off words on the paper and start talking to actors and scene designers and stuff. You talk about the force pushing something in the right direction.
Very true, especially because in that time frame, I don't think the sci-fi genre was big. I mean, I know we had Star Trek, but it really wasn't big on that. And he really named it. He didn't call it sci-fi. It was more of I think, a space opera,
Right.
was the correct kind of term that was used to help sell it.
And Tony, one of the other interesting things about this whole thing was what happened throughout the 1970s in film. Everything changed. Starting in the late 1960s, with films like 2001, Space
Space
Odyssey,
Odyssey.
right? And by the time, with all of these films like the Godfather series and all these fantastic films that came out in the 70s. And then suddenly, in the middle of the 70s, you had this one little film called Jaws. And that told the whole film world that you don't have to finance movies the way you used to. And so that changed everything. It changed where the money came from. It changed how much money would be available to make films. And without the success of Jaws, we wouldn't have had Star Wars. It's that important. But what Star Wars did was they took everything that happened before, and then they rose the bar real high on what we're expected to do now to make a movie. And the greatest part for me, the greatest part that says the whole thing, is that first scene. You've got this triangle. This one ship with the, what is it, the 443, with the 11 engines,
Right. Yes.
yeah, and the blockade runner, and then a couple of bolts of plasma going back and forth, and then you see this little triangle, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the next thing you know, it's filling up the screen, and you go, my God, that's a big ship, and you know what? The ship's only halfway past you.
Right.
Right.
And right then and there, it was great. This is great visual storytelling. It's telling you, get rid of all your preconceived ideas. Everything's changed, and it worked. It worked. It was great visual storytelling from the very first shot, and that's what I expect out of every Star Wars film since then, is good visual storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think sometimes people miss some of the storytelling. I mean, the prequels, for example. For some reason, everyone hates the prequels. I, on one hand, love the prequels because it's about the storytelling. It's about the transformation of Anakin Skywalker to Darth Vader. It's about a man who finds a love and wants to keep that love, but he can't. Um, so he gets twisted because he is young and vulnerable. Everyone says Hayden Christensen and the acting that he did, label him as a whiny brat. Well, that's part of it. That's part of that metamorphosis from that whiny brat to the Vader that we see in A New Hope that's willing to force choke someone right there. If we didn't have that, no one just is strong from the jump.
Hmm.
That doesn't often happen. You have to have that transformation. And to me, was it Attack? No, I can't remember the first. It may have been Attack of the Clones. But to me, when Padme comes in and the young Anakin says, "Are you an angel?" I've heard about these angels. Well, every guy in the world or every person in the world has fell in love at first sight. So that to me right there speaks volumes. This young kid all of a sudden has this crush on this girl, and so later on they fall in love. Well, he wants to keep this love, but at the same time, he's young and naive and gets warped. One of the things that Palpatine and the Emperor says to him is, he tells the story about I can't pronounce it. Darth Plagueis, how he learned to cheat death. You can save the ones that you love. So he was like, okay, if I go to this side, I can save her, my unborn children. I can have all this, but he's just being warped.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
one of the cool things that you're mentioning about that is about the transformation of Darth Vader, is of Anakin into Darth Vader, is how much of his transformation was being manipulated by Palpatine from the get-go,
right,
from the very beginning of it, and then and also how much of Padme's affection for Anakin, how much of that was manipulation as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain things that are alluded to. There's some things that they allude to in the novel, in the whole novel world, which of course they didn't do. Like for instance, calling her an angel. In the novels, in all the novel series, Luke has this idea that his mom is some transcendent being, somewhere out there. They're not doing any of that with the movies. I'm glad they're not. That would just go too weird. But this whole transformation, again, how much was manipulated by Palpatine and others, and there's Anakin in the middle of this tennis match.
right.
Now, also too, just to get a little clarity, with Anakin going through this transition from being his natural self into going into the dark side. What I thought is very interesting about you, Tony, I know you're a big Darth Vader fan. So when this is going on through these different series of films, and now you have those films that are a better explanation as to why Darth Vader is how he is and who he is, I think that is important to make those developmental changes, that evolution. What is it about Darth Vader that has you, for lack of a better way of saying it, hooked? Because you are the biggest Darth Vader fan. Not everybody's a fan of the villain.
And that's funny. I tend to be fans of the villains, whether it's Vader, if DC, like the DC comics, I'm a fan of Deathstroke, who's a villain. If you go to Marvel, I'm a fan of Kingpin, the Red Skull. For some reason, I tend to go to the villains. I think there's a duality in the villain that most people don't look at. I appreciate
that's the attraction of Batman. That's the attraction of Batman. He's always just one step from being the villain.
Yeah, I think it depends on which version of Batman, though.
That's Frank Miller's Batman.
Yes, exactly, the Frank Miller Batman. Exactly.
Right.
I like that. Or, for example, if you go to Image, you have Spawn. So I've always been attracted to that kind of, okay, is he good, is he bad, why is he doing that? The hero does things to save the day. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with saving the day, but at the same time, why does a villain do what they do? So you delve into that personality, and that's always intrigued me about it. And it's a power invader. I really feel like there's a power invader that if he had gone a different path, that power could have been good, but he didn't.
And what's interesting is that Darth Vader at the end of 6 finds a way to balance both sides of the Force together.
He does, yeah.
And that's actually I'm just speaking out loud here, but to me that's actually the whole concept of what the Jedi should be about. It should be about balance, and that's their tragic flaw. The Jedi's tragic flaw is that they'll push the dark side away, and then claim they have balance.
Yes.
And
I think
it's funny because you see the conflict in that.
right. I think Obi-Wan said it best when he says a Jedi doesn't deal in absolutes. Well, that's an absolute in itself. That right there is a contradiction. So you're saying it doesn't deal in that, but then, and like you said, if you do any reading in like the EU or expanded universe, there's gray Jedi. I mean, there's different levels of Jedi as it goes. But again, obviously, the EU is not considered canon with the new film, so
right,
there's that too. So
right, and we're learning more, and it looks like they're with in The Force Awakens with Snoke, with Snoke. It looks like there are some Force users out there that are evil that have nothing to do with the Sith, and that's kind of cool. That's intriguing.
it is. It really is, because you always think, well, there's more than one brand of evil.
Yeah.
And so you always been a Sith. Well, Sith. Well, okay, who's Snook? Who is he? And what does he have? And that's one of the things I hope happens in Episode 8 to kind of expand upon that.
Yeah. Well, what are you expecting to maybe not? I hope we're not jumping the gun, but what are you expecting based upon what we know so far that's in the films? What are you expecting to see in 8?
I've got a laundry list, but unfortunately, I don't think they'll cover it all. I think
some of the top ones.
Yeah, I think who's Rey's parents. I think that should be covered. I'll be disappointed if somehow she is a Skywalker somewhere, because that to me is too bland. Because for years it's just been one family basically messing up the universe. I hate to say it in a way. So I think they need to deviate. Kylo Ren, who trained him? Everyone thinks that Luke trained him and somehow he turned. Why did he turn?
They've already
they alluded that in this film, though, didn't they?
Not really, a little bit, but where they alluded to it even more was in the novelized version of the movie, where Leia and Han have it out because she knows with Ben at a very young age is being manipulated by some outside force.
Yeah, and I haven't read the novelized version yet. I've been meaning to pick it up.
Now it's interesting that they decided not to put that scene in the film. So either they're going to drop it altogether, or they're going to incorporate it as we learn more about Kylo Ren.
Right. And but I think that speaks to true life. We have our parents that try to guide us, but then we're also always influenced by other factors. So in a way, it mirrors real life, And I like to know the issues between Han and Leia. Obviously, that could just be personality type. You have, Princess Warrior trying to right wrongs, and we have the sly guy that's always hustling. So, and how that affected their child.
Yeah.
I think in Episode 8, I'd like to see that too. So.
Yeah. I have this feeling that I would like to see. I agree with you about Rey. She's the biggest question I have right now. Who is she? Where does she come from? And how does she fit in this big picture that we call Star Wars? Unlike you, I wouldn't be too amiss if found out that she was somehow related to the Skywalker, bloodline. That wouldn't bother me that much, but it all depends on how they do it. If you take a blood test and go, oh gosh darn it, you're our long lost cousin twice removed. That's stupid. Yeah. Or if they find out that that, oh, well, this is one of Han's 27 children that he had out there, while before he
Right.
met Leia, that also too would be kind of stupid.
Yeah.
I think it would be cool, just my own opinion, would be cool if there was a society, even more ancient than we know, of these people who have these children who are out there seemingly orphaned. And because Luke was in a very similar way, you don't know the parents, you don't know where the parents are, who the parents are. And yet, the same thing could happen to Ray. There could be a group that was in existence also facilitating the Force, maybe not knowing it as the Force, and maybe she's an ancestor of that group of people, and maybe Anakin and is also from that group of people. They're not
Well,
related necessarily by family, but related by culture.
well, what's interesting is, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Greg, because if you remember in the Phantom Menace, Anakin is a virgin birth. So he just came. The Force created Anakin. Wouldn't it be interesting if the Force created Rey?
Right, and there could be others that are
Right.
created in the same
Right.
way
Yes.
that may be introduced as we go, so that we have a better understanding. Like, well, it's not obviously now with Ray being introduced here, it's not unique now.
No.
It's
And
not.
and
It's not too far fetched that there are others.
and I would like to see, ultimately, I would like to see a reconciliation between the dark side and the light side, and realize that no matter what, they're both a part of the same gaffer's tape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, before we get too much further in, I'd like to take a moment for the journey into the tourism of the Star Wars museum that is that is Tony King's Star Wars Darth Vader cave.
All right, let me see if I can do this without making too many people motion sick. So behind me we have a couple of pieces of art, um,
A little
and
higher up
then
there.
okay, that better.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
then we have my, of course, my Empire Needs You, and then we have my top of my entertainment center that has various figures. When I was a kid, I always wanted the Darth Vader Kenner figure, so I got one of those off of eBay. I've got various Darth Vader, like a bank, alarm clock, and I have the Star Wars film slides from the first 6 movies. I don't know if you can see that hanging up top.
Yes, we can.
So I have that recently. Also have a nice size Vader that I got during that Force Friday. And if you can see kind of here over on the floor, that's one of the original Kenner figure cases that actually inside of it actually has figures as well.
A little further down to see that.
Is that better?
Yeah, we can see like the top of it.
Okay, hold on. All right.
There you go.
There you
All
go.
right. So yeah, that's one of the original from like the early 80s. Another
Wow.
eBay find. Um, and then over here you have some more modern things. You have a nice size Chewbacca. I actually was looking on eBay tonight for the original Chewbacca that I had when I was a child. Um, Nice little Bluetooth Millennium Falcon speaker. Yoda lunchbox. Um, and a couple of my newest pieces, the samurai style Vader and Boba Fett. And then obviously a scene from Return of the Jedi's. And Star Wars M&M, gotta have some candy.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
so that's kind of a quick tour of the museum. I probably have some other stuff, but they're all away in the closet. I've got a lot of the new Black Series figures that have come out on Force Friday. I've got probably 6 or 7 of those hidden away. And I also have, there's a company called Sideshow Collectibles that does high quality figures. I actually got a Kylo Ren, and I've got a Vader that I actually have to return, but to exchange for another one. And then I've got 3 or 4 of those on order. They're not for, the average Joe because they're expensive. They usually run anywhere from 200 to $400 a pop. Um, so, but again, it's just for the diehards.
Ain't nothing wrong with being a collector, my friend. Ain't nothing wrong with it.
For the diehards. So,
Well,
and of course,
it's interesting. With the 3D printers now, there's a company out there who, a couple of companies out there that'll give you to give you the instructions, the software commands, so that you can print out a Darth Vader life-size helmet.
nice.
So,
Yeah, I had at one time or other I thought about joining the 501st, but to get a movie style authentic costume is a little bit of money. I mean, the 501st does great things for kids and charities around the world.
they do.
I just not sure I want to pluck that kind of money at one time. Not that I don't have it already in various things, but so yeah, that's probably going to be on my next thing within the next couple of years, I think.
Now, let me ask you a question. Now, this is not about memorabilia as much as all these other videos that have come on out. These Star Wars parodies.
Hmm.
Starting with like the Family Guy Star Wars parodies, starting with Blue Harvest, and then something Dark Side, and It's a Trap being the third one.
Yes, I have those somewhere in here.
They're hilarious. Yeah. And then not to mention Mel Brooks's Spaceballs.
Yes.
And there's in my last count, I counted over 57 major works that were parodies of the Star Wars films. That's huge. That's a huge number.
It is, and I mean, Spaceballs is probably my favorite. The Family Guy trilogy is probably my second favorite. But Star Wars, you hear so many Star Wars references. I mean, everyday TV, music. I was listening to the old school hip hop station on the way to work the other day, and I noticed there was a Star Wars reference in one of the lyrics. It's everywhere. And even now, like I said, obviously, I'm a Cowboys fan. I actually have an official licensed Cowboys shirt with Vader on it. So it's everywhere in popular society.
So
That is amazing.
a couple 2-3 years ago, my wife, myself, and my son, we were in this place just in Dearborn, Michigan, called Greenfield Village. I don't know if you ever heard of that. And my son was wearing a T-shirt, this black T-shirt that says "Join the dark side. We have cookies."
Yes.
Okay, so as we're walking one way, and we see another kid walking this way with the dark T-shirt, totally black, with "Welcome to the dark side. We lied about the cookies."
Sweet. Yeah, when we
That
travel,
is too funny.
I wear a large number of Star Wars shirts. My wife, like, will be, Las Vegas. We'll be walking down the street of Las Vegas, and someone would say, "Hey, man, nice shirt." Or, for example, we were down on Fremont Street. I think it was last year. Someone had the stormtrooper. It says "Support our troops." It had a stormtrooper helmet, but then the stormtrooper was colored like the American flag, and I had to stop the guy and say, "Where did you get it?"
Yeah.
So at this point, I've probably easily got I would say 60 to 70 Star Wars T-shirts, whether they're official license or mashed up. There's a couple of companies that do kind of these mashups. So yeah, I'm I've tried to tone down some, but every now and then one
Yeah.
will come
make
to me.
make its way.
Yes. So
So, Greg, what do you think is going to happen in the Star Wars 8?
Well, before we even get to that point, because that I wanted to know what you guys really thought about this one. We've talked around it, but not about it.
okay.
So let's talk about this film. Was this comparable to the previous films? Is this a good explanation as to it obviously for me is wants me to, and it probably might even be the reason for your question too, Larry, propel us into that next adventure, that next saga. Um, but did this answer any questions? Did this give us a uh, new life for
Well,
this series?
and I'd like to say here now that Kasdan did a great job with the script. He did exactly what he needed to do with the script, and he brought back most of the old fans and gave us a whole bunch of new fans. Because without the new fans, the Star Wars franchise dies.
Sure.
Exactly.
So he gave he he wrote this new script so with the sensibilities of today's audience. If he wrote the script a lot like A New Hope, I'm sorry, but most of the people would have walked out of the theater. A New Hope is nostalgic, and it should be that way now. It doesn't mean it's any less good. It's just nostalgic now. My God, it's how many years old is it? It's almost almost 50 years old.
Yeah.
It's getting up there. So everything is with this new film. They really did a good job, I believe, in creating a new franchise for these new fans out there. Remember, most of these people, and I don't want to say kids, and I shouldn't. Most of these people who are under 30 years old, they spend more money on video games than they do on movies, and so the franchise ultimately is going to be in that direction, and it's going to be like a video game, and it's going to have that same type of look and feel and action, and this film does. It feels like a video game in many, many places.
What about you, Tony?
I agree on everything except for one part. To me, it reminded me of A New Hope, but a modernized version. And to me, I thought that was good because I thought there was still a connection to it. It was still my Star Wars, but at the same time, it was Star Wars for a new generation. I took my daughter and one of her friends who is 9. So to me, that was that moment of me remembering going to see. I was too young to see, A New Hope in theaters, but Return of the Jedi. So that to me was that same. I've just started a tradition,
Yeah.
with
Tony, I'm going to just let you know. Greg knows this, but when A New Hope came out, of course, the words A New Hope wasn't anywhere near the screen at all. It was just called Star Wars, and the scroll at the beginning never said New Hope. That didn't happen for a couple years later. But I was there on opening night for Star Wars back in 1977, and then I saw it over 250 times before I stopped counting.
Wow. See, I'm not that bad. I don't think I've seen that many times.
And that's when I realized that I probably have one of those personalities that tend to do things like that. An addictive personality. I think that's what they call it.
So,
but the neat thing is that and actually you and I agree, Tony, that there's enough of the original Star Wars in there. There's enough of A New Hope in there to bring back most of the fans of the original trilogy. Um, uh, yeah, there are going to be some people who are going to hate it, and I can't help them, you know. But for all intents and purposes, it was a good film.
Yeah.
And with all kidding aside, with the box office it got, didn't seem like it had a whole bunch of haters.
Oh my
Um,
God, no! But how many records did it break?
Still,
Still, right, still. I think some of the hateration came from the fact that the EU was nowhere in it. See, when you stop making films and then you establish this big universe of the EU and everybody's reading them, well, that becomes forefront in people's minds. So that's what people wanted. But unfortunately, that can't happen because Joe Blow off the street doesn't know the EU, doesn't know Jana Solo, doesn't know how she turned.
right.
They don't know that. So they had to connect with the original six films. Well, the original three plus the prequels. They had to connect with that to get people into the
Oh, yeah.
seat. So,
Yeah. Well, and I think that rightly so. I think that Lucas and Kasdan and Disney did a really good job in saying, no, we're reestablishing the canon, and they told us where they were going to get it from, and which also includes uh, 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 Star Wars Rebels, the animated series.
right.
So that's part of the canon we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of little clues in that happened before Force Awakens came out. That was like, oh, that's going to happen. That's going to happen. And they were very careful in which clues that they revealed. And if that's your thing, if you're into trying to figure out how it's going to work and stuff, that's good too.
Sure it is.
I just loved sitting back, relaxing, and enjoying it. And the great thing, the most fun I had about this film was that I sat right next to my son,
Exactly.
who's 11 years old, and I got another story to tell you. Years ago, this was like, um, this is like 5 years ago. 5 years ago, my son was no, 8 years ago. Sorry, 8 years ago. My son was 3 years old, and both he and I were sick. And he had heard me talk about Star Wars. He said, Daddy, Star Wars. And he picks up the DVD and hands it to me. Okay, fine. So I pop it in, and we watch Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and The Return of the Jedi all in one sitting. This 3-year-old kid is just, I want more! And of course, my wife didn't talk to me for a week, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, what's a week?
That's right.
Nothing.
But then when The Force Awakens comes out, and he sits right next to me, and he says to me, Dad, are you excited as I am? I mean, right there. That's
cool.
And that's ultimately what made this movie work for me. He loved it. It was great.
Yeah. I mean, when I told my daughter I bought tickets, she was like so hype and was ready. And I mean, I went and got her, and she was just, we went to like a, I don't know, 5:30 showing, and we had to wait outside, and it was December in Indiana. I mean, it's kind of chilly. She didn't complain about the cold once. She was like, it was like, let's go, Daddy, I'm ready. And it started, and it was just that look on her face, and she was just, shaking my arm, and it's just, that's what, to me, part of the whole experience is about. I get to say, I saw this with, my daughter. I got to start a whole new tradition that she can do with her kids.
Right.
You
Right.
know, I had a couple of twins that I babysit for a while. They're two and a half. I bought them Star Wars. I've already started to see it in these young kids already. So it's to me something you can pass on. And it's funny, you talk about my collection. I literally get texts and phone calls and Facebook messages from all my friends all over the country saying, "Hey, I just saw this. Do you have this? Do you want me to pick it up?" I mean, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's great. It's really great to have that. And then it also takes me back to the times when my aunt used to work at Kmart back in the early 80s. So she would get us figures, the Kenner figures and,
Yeah.
Star Wars, G.I. Joe. We would get them because, she worked at the store. So we were able to get them. And so that to me too is part of it. I think if the movie had even stunk, I still would have been thankful for the experience of being able to
Well,
bridge
yeah,
the gap.
I think there are a lot of people like that, and I'd be one of them. Even though I didn't like the Phantom Menace, not one bit. But I wouldn't have. I definitely would still have gone to see that movie, even knowing I wasn't going to like it. Um, but and there's one reason why I didn't like it. Truly, it was Jar Jar Binks. Um, I have a problem with Jar Jar, just like in the uh, uh, just like in the Return of the Jedi. I've got a problem with the Ewoks. But you know what? In the grand scheme of things, so what? Big deal.
Right.
They're a part of the storyline, and you just accept it or you walk away. And I've accepted it. So
But you know what's funny about the Ewoks in the EU? The Ewoks were a little bit more menacing than what,
Right, they were.
yes, they
so
are.
they were almost cannibalists. And
Right.
Yeah.
so, but again, you have to have that seed for the next generation, I think. And I think that with the Ewoks, they pulled it off. Jar Jar Binks, and not so much.
No. And the all the what's the name of that race again? The Gungdan.
The Gungan, yeah, the Gungans, yep.
Um, they weren't very consistent with how they talked and how they walked, and it was like, oh, let's make this guy silly. Okay, and let's make this guy goofy. Okay, let's make this guy Daffy Duck.
Right.
And rather than having some consistency within the race, I think that was a mistake on George Lucas's part, not necessarily uh, um, in decisions that he made while while putting that film together. Um, there's a lot of decisions that aren't the actor, they're not the director, they come from way at the top. Um, and Lucas was very specific. He said he wanted to make a movie that his kids would like, and not one that was so violent. But they ended up being as violent as, I mean, the number three is about as violent as you're going to get.
Order 66. I mean, that right there, you killed the younglings. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think it was violent, and I think it needed to be to show the transformation.
Oh
It
well,
had to
yeah.
be ruthless. It
Hmm.
just couldn't, because you wouldn't have believed it. You wouldn't have believed it otherwise if
Right.
it wasn't ruthless.
And so starting and uh, um, episode one made a lot more sense to me after seeing episode three, because then you could see this transformation from this innocent kid to this kid killer.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what people needed to see. No
Hmm.
one just wakes up a kid killer. How did he get there? And in hindsight, maybe episode three was the best of the prequels, but I don't think you can do episode three without the first two.
That's true.
That makes sense.
Mhm. I agree. I
So,
agree. So in the Force Awakens, were were you as surprised as a lot of the people were with the with the big death scene?
yes and no. Um, I was a little disappointed in it, but at the same time, I felt it was coming. Um, just the tension in the air, and let's be honest, somebody's got to die. Um, Obi-Wan died, Yoda dies, Vader died. Somebody, somebody had to die. Plus, in today's world, we knew there was just issues with Harrison Ford and how he felt about the trilogy, so that kind of made him a prime suspect to die. Plus, again, it goes to show, okay, if Kylo Ren will kill his own father,
What
what
else?
won't he do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed.
Now, what's interesting is that now these are some of the rumors, and I repeat, these are rumors, they're not spoilers, rumors that I've heard. I have heard, and these are from people in the know, people in the industry, and people not just in the industry, but who deal with um, Disney and Lucasfilm. The rumors I've heard are that Luke knew full well what was going to happen with Han when Ben was born. He knew through the Force. He knew so that's interesting to about that, and that's the real reason why the Han and Leia split. If Han got away, then maybe Ben wouldn't kill him. So that is a rumor. There's no validity to that other than it's a rumor from a reliable source. There's another rumor that I heard too was that that Han Solo knew when and where he was going to get killed, and he knew that his son had to kill him because the son is trying to infiltrate this different dark group, and he's actually has been sent by Luke to do it. And all these rumors are coming from very different sources, and not necessarily ones that you can get see on the internet. These sources are coming from people who I know in the industry, in the film industry. For instance, I knew about Han Solo's death about 3 weeks beforehand. And that was, did it bother me? No, I guessed it. I guessed it even before then, that it had to happen. Of all the characters, he's the one that had to die. So,
yeah. I think his death is almost like a rite of passage in a way. I mean, if that makes sense, because if you want to join our club, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to kill your own father to get there? How evil are you really? So
right.
My thing in episode 8, if you kill your own father in episode 7, in episode 8, you gotta stay that path. You gotta keep the killing up. I mean, obviously it doesn't have to be bloody, but I mean you kind of gotta keep that.
It has to be an air of
thing about you.
ruthlessness. It has to be an air of ruthlessness to it.
Yes, exactly.
And he proves to his master that he's willing to go that far. He's willing to do and continue to be manipulated, continue to be mentored into further and further into the dark realms. But a lot of times what that does is if you go in, and we know this in real life too, if you become an extremist, sometimes it takes you full circle.
Right.
So now you're so into this and you're so much into this, your mind again starts to change and you start to see things differently.
Yeah.
And we were talking about Darth Vader and coming into that, bringing that duality together, starting to facilitate that balance. What happens now if he facilitates that balance? What does he do? Maybe that's the next thing that we should be looking at.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a great point.
I think too, for me, I want them to expand upon Captain Phasma. what role does she play? I mean, it was kind of she was just kind of the silent number two, and the character was hyped up a little bit, but then the screen time was just kind of, I don't want to say dull, but it
Well,
just
and,
wasn't
and,
there.
and minimal.
and they hyped her up, in posters and advertisements and stuff. It's like they hyped up Captain Phasma, Captain Phasma, Captain Phasma, and I'm praying. I said this to some people as I walked out of the theater, is that I hope they don't do to her what they did with Boba Fett. They made a big deal about Boba Fett, Boba Fett, Boba Fett. It's like as if we should have known about this guy all along.
Right.
Yeah.
And then nothing. Then he dies in the Sarlacc.
I mean, it was quick.
Supposedly he
Retrospectively,
died
it was
in the
really
Sarlacc.
retrospectively.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it was quick.
What happens is he ends up shooting his way out the side of the Sarlacc and all that. But that's in the books. It's
Right.
not in the film. It's not in the new canon. So
Right.
so
Yeah. It's just like Darth Maul. They did the same thing to Darth Maul. My opinion,
yeah.
Darth Maul could have been one of the greatest villains in cinematic history, but you let him go out kind of like a chump almost.
Well, one of the things that I read and I like this critique that they ran into Darth Maul was that they're about to make something more menacing than Darth Vader, and they didn't want that.
Yeah,
And
I can see that.
personally, what I would have liked to have seen was I would have liked to have seen Darth Maul getting up there. He's on the side of the Emperor. Now he starts looking at the Emperor going, I can kill the Emperor. And then he gets killed by Anakin/Vader. As Anakin goes up the ranks in.
Right. Yeah.
Now that's the story I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah. That would have been a great story. Because that would have also had proven, hey, you know what? You don't need this guy. I'm the guy for you. Watch this. You're supposed to top one. He's out of the picture, and that happens. I mean, let's look at mafia movies, for example.
I was just thinking Godfather.
Right. That happens. You see that ascension. I mean, Scarface, Tony Montana, for example. He was like, you don't need, when he went down to Colombia, and talked to, I can't remember the guy's name, and they hung the guy from the helicopter. You don't need him. I'm your guy. That happens. So yeah, that would have been a nice take on it.
Yeah, exactly. So I really, it's 2017 is a year away, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and they have Rogue One is filming now. Episode 8 started filming now, so I'll be interested to see what Rogue One entails, if it kind of gives some background information.
Now, what's interesting? Well, I'm sorry for interrupting, but what's interesting is how what Disney's doing with this franchise. With the Marvel franchise, Disney is being iron-fisted. No, this is how you're going to do it, and if we don't like you, we're going to pull you from the film and get somebody else. But with the Star Wars stuff, they're giving the filmmakers a lot more latitude. And as a matter of fact, there was a huge article in it just recently about this I think in Hollywood Reporter, about how Disney is giving the filmmakers with the Star Wars franchise more latitude than they do with any of their other franchises.
I think that makes sense. You've got a bigger fan base. And you got a fan base that's proven will go see almost anything. I mean, not saying that in a negative light, but there's a hunger there and there's a thirst there. Plus, I think for the Star Wars franchise and the writers and the producers that they got for it, they're Star Wars fans.
Right.
So you give them that leeway versus, say, the Marvel franchise. I think you have to be tight with the Marvel universe, even though I don't like it. For example, Tony Stark. In my view, somewhere along the line, Tony Stark should become an alcoholic and let Rodney Rhodes take over the suit.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's not going to happen. But
No,
again, I'm
yeah.
more of a comic book guy. And for example, another thing, uh, the Netflix series is doing Power Man and Iron Fist.
Right.
Everyone wanted an Asian actor, which is another topic in movies altogether. They want an Asian actor for Iron Fist, but Iron
But
Fist is not Asian.
yeah, and that's matter of
Correct.
fact, that's a big problem in his early career that he isn't Asian. So you know, when is that movie coming out? Do you know?
Well, it's going to be a
Um,
TV
it's
series on
it's gonna be
Netflix.
Oh,
Netflix. I think they're not
yeah,
talking until next year because Daredevil 2 starts in March, airing on
right.
Netflix.
And they're
Uh,
working on Jessica Jones right now, so it
Jessica
will
I
Jones is already out.
right. But
yeah.
I mean in the sense of utilizing Luke Cage in Jessica Jones, so
Yes,
they're not going to bring any of the other defenders until a little later on,
yes.
because they're developing Luke Cage's identity and his persona in Jessica Jones's
Well, they're
time.
Right.
gonna and the defenders are gonna tie together once the Doctor Strange movie comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Mr. Cumberbatch.
yeah, and I'm looking forward to that one. I think that that one has the potential of being really crappy or really good.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they got a good actor, so let's see if they can put a good movie around that guy.
Yeah.
Right. I've seen the screenshots of him as Doctor Strange,
Me
and
too.
he looks solid.
He
Yeah.
does.
But the
He
question
looks
is,
solid.
does the script is it a good script and is there good visual storytelling?
Right. Yes,
Right.
because with Doctor Strange, you need the visuals.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
I mean
with
that's
any
the
of the
whole thing about a motion picture.
universes, you have to. I think the visuals are. It's imperative
Right.
because of what, and that's the cool thing about this day and age and the abilities that cinematographers and directors and studios have in being able to show us more vivid realities, more vivid um, uh, surroundings, so that we can still use our imagination, but not so much
Right.
as before. And now, I'm watching it even in the TV series. Um, these backdrops and the abilities that these studios have for the on the television screen is wonderful already. And you know, I just think it's going to keep going and getting better and better and better. And
Right.
so we'll be able to tell those stories, or we'll be able to see these stories being enacted even more so to our liking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to comic books, to a small extent, I like my consider myself a purist. So, for instance, when Bruce Wayne closes up the Batcave in the early '70s because Dick Grayson goes away to college, you know, um, that to me that was huge. That was gigantic, and in the world of comic books, that was a huge thing. But it's like nobody even talks about that anymore. Um, uh, after the crisis on Infinite Earth, um, and we realized that, well, if Spectre doesn't like it, he can just change reality. Okay, good enough. Um, but DC had a real problem with having all of these storylines that went in all different directions. They didn't come together, and it presented to them a huge problem because Byrne showed them. This is before Miller got involved, but Byrne showed them when didn't Byrne do JLA for a little while,
Yeah, he did. He did.
and he showed them, look, if you start lining these stories up, imagine how much more readership you're going to have, and he was right.
Yeah. And I think the problem too with DC now, I mean, even now they had a new 52 and they're trying to rehash it. I mean, I went into the comic book store probably a year or so ago, and I went because I knew that the new Deathstroke was starting back up, and I was trying to start reading the other titles. I'm like, there's just no way. The person off the street, it's very hard right now for someone to come in and just start reading a book. I'm not talking about just arc. I mean, an arc lasts three, four issues, but there's so many different variations of things. There's so many universes within DC or Marvel. I mean,
Right.
Marvel just did the Secret Wars 2. Like I said, DC's got the Infinite Earth. They got the New 52. It's so hard nowadays, and I think that's partly why Disney has been tighter with Marvel than versus Star Wars, because you guys take on that
Yeah.
same timeline.
Yeah. No. Back to Star Wars again. From what I understand, the comic is going to be a part. How the comic is going now, it's going to be a part of the new canon. Any video production, whether if it's going to be an animated series or anything, is a part of the new canon. So we're going to be seeing some things that I think that a lot of people forgot, or some new things that a lot of people may love, or some people may scratch their head and go, what was that?
Right, and I agree. I mean, I started reading the new Star Wars when it came out, Vader and all that, and I got so kind of preoccupied in doing other things, especially with the end of grad school. I kind of stopped, so I really haven't picked up lately. Last couple of days, last weeks, I've been more to the comic book store to try to pick up some. I mean, the new Power Man and Iron Fist has started back. I'm trying to catch back up with Vader, with Deathstroke, the Suicide Squad. Just different ones, Spawn even.
Yeah.
So. And it's hard though. Like I said, I think that's where, again, you lose viewership if
Isn't
you.
there going to be a Cloak and Dagger story coming out?
Yes, yes, there's supposed to be a Cloak and Dagger coming out in a few months, I believe. That's another one I always like. The Punisher I always like. Punisher Warzone I like more than War Journal. And I mean the Punisher's now in Daredevil season 2. What's the guy from Walking Dead?
Right.
Rick Grimes' buddy. I can't remember. He's going to be the Punisher, which I will be interested in to see how he portrays it. He's a good actor.
Yeah.
I've always liked the Punisher. I mean, I liked the first Punisher movie better than the second one. The second one went off Punisher Warzone too much and was out there. I mean, so.
Well, guys, I hate to say this, but we're winding down here. So we kind of got off subject for a minute, but that's because we're such comic book fans anyway. I think we're going on 12 right about now. Any last interesting words for our viewers about this latest film, The Force Awakens, that you thought was, let's say, negative, something that you didn't like?
Yeah, going back to what I said a bit earlier about how some of it was shot like a video game. The sequence of actions that happened, it was a lot like a first-person shooter video game.
I mean, you talk about like the scene on the cargo ship when they're running away from the monster. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, that's one.
That was. It reminded me of Doom almost.
Well, yeah, I was thinking Doom. That's too funny. I was thinking kind of like Doom a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously, I wasn't alone.
Yeah, so but then again, I'm not the audience they're trying to attract anymore. So again, it's something that I just might have to live with.
But you know what? We're all the audience, right? It doesn't matter what age we are. So we still have to make us happy too.
Yeah.
That's right. It's all about me.
Well, it's all about the universe of me. So I don't mean that in me singularly. I mean us as viewers, us as the audience. We're all looking at it for our own reasons. So
if you do that, then go back to what these are called motion pictures, Stick with a good story. Stick with a good visual narrative. Tell the story you want to tell, but make sure there's high production value and you don't overshoot yourself. Look at, like I said in many of our conversations, Greg, look at the very first Academy Award-winning film, Wings, and you'll have a good example on how a visual narrative is done.
Last words, Tony?
To me, I think it just didn't have the depth that I wanted, and it was hard to do that and keep not get some audience members away from it. I wanted to see a little bit more depth as far as some background to some of the characters. Obviously, I can wait a year, but at the same time, to me, a compelling story is going to give me enough depth within that one episode to go. I mean, there's Phasma, Ray, Finn, Poe. They introduced the characters, but they didn't give enough depth. Even I can't remember the character with the bar, with the glasses. How did she get the lightsaber? I mean,
that's the whole story.
Right. So, I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, so they could have added more depth, but at the same time, I understand they don't. It would have been a 3-4 hour movie if they added the depth that I wanted, but at the same time.
But also, too, we don't know that we're not going to get it either.
Right.
Oh, true.
It could come into the next few films.
Real quick, part of the original script was written was a search between Kylo Ren and Rey, searching for that lightsaber to see who'd get it first. That was totally written out. That to me would have been a very compelling story as well.
Yeah. So.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you guys listening to our banter on Star Wars: The Awakening, and also our other interesting tidbits about the previous Star Wars films, and looking to the future for the new ones coming out, and just hoping that we'll be as pleased, if not more pleased, than we are at this one. Thanks, Larry. Wave at the people.
Hello, everybody. Go see a movie tonight.
Thanks, Tony. Wave at the people. And I'm Greg here on A Real Point of View on our YouTube channel and Google Plus, saying thanks again for listening. Join us again next week. We'll have something cool for you. But like Larry says, go out and see a movie. Even tonight.
Definitely.
Look at a movie.
Yeah, if you're on the West Coast, go ahead.
And don't do what we said last week. Don't kidnap a friend to go see a movie. You're just kidding. Don't do that.
And I'd like to say, Larry said we. It was Larry who said that.
Disclaimer out there, right?
But I still support him from afar, behind.
I'm going to have to tell Karen on you.
Well, from here on A Real Point of View, I like to say good night, and thanks again for listening and watching, and we'll come back with you next week with some more interesting and important news about film. Thanks again, and you guys have a good night. Take care, Tony.
Right.
Take care, Larry.
All
Peace.
right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.